Hello, everyone. This is Sean Smith, and you are tuned in to the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. The podcast that will connect you to resources regionally and nationwide to engage them and you in open, honest discussions so that we can inspire the growth that you need to chase the experience you want. So strap yourself in because here we go. Hello, everyone. This is Sean Smith for Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. You're listening to part 2 of the mini-series that we recorded live at the 4th Annual Antler Scoring Event at Northeast Outdoors in New Philadelphia, Ohio. I got to say that slow because it's a lot of like ANs for me to get out without screwing that up. So remember, this is live, so there's going to be some background noises that typically wouldn't be there from a studio record, so bear with that. But in this episode, we're sitting down with a wealth of knowledge about not only the Buckeye Big Buck Club, say that 5 times fast, but also just the state of hunting whitetail in Ohio in general, or just the outdoors in general. The guest for this episode is a board member of the Buckeye Big Buck Club. He's also the historian of the Buckeye Big Buck Club and also an official scorer for the Buckeye Big Buck Club. His name's Jim Williamson. He's been doing this for a long time, and he has a lot of institutional knowledge to bestow upon us. So Jim was gracious enough to sit down with us and give us a little bit of insight into the Buckeye Big Buck Club, the scoring, how the scoring works, how to become a scorer if you're interested, and what to expect if you bring a deer in that makes it into the Buckeye Big Buck Club. So coming up next, this is Jim. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hello, everyone. This is Sean Smith with Chasing Your Experience podcast, brought to you by Country Fried Outdoors. And today we are here live at Northeast Outdoors for their 4th Annual Antler Scoring Event. That is really hard for me to say, by the way. And sitting across from me is I've got the Buckeye Big Buck Club board member and official scorer, Jim Williamson. How are you, sir?
I'm well.
You're well. Been a long day.
Yeah, it's been a long day, but an interesting day.
Yeah, there's some really good deer coming today.
Yeah, it's really amazing what has shown up in the last, I've been at this for a long time. I'm 66 years old. Actually been doing this since I was 21, so you do the math. I don't want to make a mistake here, but yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, and I think the first year that I was involved as a board member of the Buckeye Big Buck Club, I was age 21. Yeah, I think we had less than $100 going in. I'm sure that was less than 100. Actually, before me, the predecessors, that there was a board membership that included, when I came on, that included members that originated the club, and that would have been 1957. So we've been doing it a long time since, and our annual banquets now, we're giving out about between 500 and 600 certificates every year. That's 140 minimum typical, 160 non-typical minimum. A good friend of mine is also a fellow board member from Athens County. He's our records keeper, our club secretary / treasurer, and he compiles all these numbers for us. He told me at the last banquet, we are now over 21,000 people that have had bucks scored through this club that have reached the 140 and 160 minimums, of course, respectively, typical and non-typical. Wow. It doesn't mean that our record book lists 21,000 people. Mm-hmm. The normal routine is, I score bucks, say you got one that made it, I would score that, you would get your certificate, and you would pay your $30 entry fee. We would never hear from you again. Which is fine. I understand that. It's $5 a year to remain a voting member. which is pretty good these days to be a member of anything.
Right.
But we usually never hear from them people again, but we do since we've gone to computer for all of our records. We do still have that number, and Mike told me it's over 21,000 people now that we've put through on the minimum measurements.
Wow, that's kind of mind blowing to think about.
Yeah.
And your history since 1956, you said?
The club was in 57. It
57?
was, and we started. I think our first banquet ended up being, which I was 2 years old at the time. I don't remember much about it. It was 1959, and but it's grown exponentially over the years. I mean, when you get into, my father killed a buck in 1972, a nice buck. I'm from Jefferson County. It was, I would imagine, probably 100 people came to our house. That was back in the day when if you saw a deer track, you told everybody you knew.
Yeah.
So, with the deer explosion of the population in, I'm going to say the early to mid 80s, whatever that may have been. I mean, we just took off from there, and our records keeping was already in place. It wasn't something we had to start anew with. Of course, we've made improvements all along the way, and we're getting more efficient at it as we go.
Oh, excellent. So it's a little bit of history about yourself. So just you personally, you talked a little bit about your history with the club, but you personally, how many entries do you have in the club?
I just have a couple in. I've got
a
a wall full of deer, but we do have a couple guys, believe it or not, that are present board members that have over 20 deer. And one of them's from Athens County, and the other one's from up, I'm not sure what his county is up there, but he's up around Loudonville, Ohio.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. It sounds like hunting's been a family thing for you. So your father kind of brought you into it, and
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as a young kid, I think I got my first shotgun. I hope I don't offend anybody by saying this. At 10 years old, and I thought my mission in life was to kill squirrels until I was about 16 years old. So yeah, it was an early beginning.
I think it's where most people start off is with a small game. That I know I did, and that was my mission then was squirrels, and then we got involved with the deer hunting as you got older and a little bit more mature and was able to handle the larger loads and stuff like that. Absolutely. So man, a rich history for yourself in with the outdoors. Coming with a family that hunted. I actually was like I guess first generation kind of in our family to really take off with it. So. Yep.
Yeah, everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, the different paths. You had the mentors around you. I had to kind of seek some of them out. So
yeah. If I could say one more thing, it's probably been about, I'm going to say at least 15, maybe 20 years ago. I had an idea at our Big Bucks banquets. Let's give a young hunter an award. And we started that, like I say, 15, 20 years ago. So what the criteria is you had to have a qualifying buck, the young hunter, of course, a 140 or 160. But beyond that, we didn't care about the score. We went by age.
Okay.
So we gave an award to the youngest hunter with a qualifying buck.
Oh.
And that turned into quite a memorable experience at our banquets now. So as time went on, we had a lot of kids, and we just were asking them, what's your age? They said, I'm 8 or I'm 9 or I'm 10 or whatever it is. Well, it got to the point where there might be a bunch of them.
Right.
So we started paring it down a little bit. We got to the point where we decided to bring on a young lady and a young man because to make that separation.
Okay, yeah.
And that's been a big deal for us. I am the one that gives that award. We usually now have, this year there was 4 kids. Unfortunately, one was not able to make our banquet. So we had like 2 6-year-old boys that had qualifying bucks. Thanks to 350 Legends and crossbows and dads and blinds, which is a good thing as far as we're concerned.
Absolutely.
And we had a couple young ladies, I believe they were both 9, and they all came into the club. One of the highlights of the banquet, especially for me, is I talked to these kids and their parents ahead of time. We try to get them up and give them a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened this year. We had 3 out of 4, and these kids come up, and I'm telling you, it's like you can hear a pin drop.
Mm.
And so we actually got them up to speak, and the first little girl that spoke, I don't know what they're going to say. I try to coach them a little bit ahead of time. We just tell us a little bit about your story so they don't get up there. Some kids just freeze. Some kids won't even come up, and that's okay. But the ones that will talk, we definitely make them a part of our banquet. So the first little girl gets up there, and I asked her. I said, I believe her name was Kaylee, if I'm not mistaken. I said, Kaylee, you want to tell us a little bit about your hunt on the deer? And she said, yeah, I'll tell you. So at this point, you're kind of like, okay, what's she going to say? I don't know what she's going to say. Nobody else plays, but they've got their ear tuned, believe me. So she gets up there and she says, yeah, Dad went out and set me up a blind, and he had a camera out, and we was getting some pictures of a pretty nice buck, but come to the first day of youth season, and she said, Dad had to work. So Mom took me. So me and Mom were sitting in the blind. She said, we've been there about an hour. She said, sure enough, that buck that Dad had pictures of would come right in front of us. And she said, I started shaking before I even got a hold of my bow.
Oh, no.
And I had a tripod in front of her. And she said, I got the bow up on the tripod and was ready for the shot. The buck came in, didn't know we were there. She said, the closer he got, the more I shook. And she said, I shook so bad that I could not shoot the deer.
Oh,
and
no.
she said, so I handed my crossbow to my mom. I said, oh, this is going to go wrong real quick. But anyhow, she said that her mom told her, just calm down. And she recovered, handed her the bow and shot I think it was like 150-something inch buck. So it's it's a highlight of our banquet. We give out a lot of awards there. We have a senior hunter award. We have a youngest hunter award. And then in the category of weapon, we've got crossbows. We've got longbow is an extended category because it includes vertical bow. I mean, all vertical bows, compounds, longbows, recurves. And then we have the crossbow category. We have, of course, the rifle category now that Ohio has instituted. There's still a few shooting with shotguns. We got muzzle loaders and even handguns. So we award 3 places at our banquet every year in each of those categories. It makes for a pretty nice evening. You can come up there. If you get a qualifying buck, you're going to get called forward. You're going to get your name announced, your county buck score, and you're going to be handed a certificate either by one of our board members or a member of the ODNR staff. So, yeah, it's a nice banquet.
Sounds like a really good deal. So, Well, a little bit of the history behind the club, if you know, how did it start? Why did it start?
Actually, if you go back, there was a man that I never met, unfortunately. Merle Gilfillan was his name, and he was I believe he started out with a department which I don't even know what they called it back then, in 1957. But he was at the forefront of recognition of the hunting for the public and stuff, and he came up with this idea to make this Buckeye Big Buck Club. And at that time, the Boone and Crockett scoring system was already in place. It was a national organization, and I can't remember the names associated with that, but it goes clear back to Roosevelt.
Yep.
And so we had a template in front of us. They commissioned the Boone and Crockett Club to allow us to use their system, which we have been doing ever since. And we got a few guys qualified to score that went to Boone and Crockett schools. I myself went to a Boone and Crockett school. Now that we've gotten, I think we're over 80 scores in the state of Ohio now. We have a district. Each district has a scoring supervisor, and we have a state scoring supervisor, and it all works out of that.
Nice.
We do a 2-year apprenticeship to become a scorer, and now we've expedited that a little bit, and they're doing a 1 or 2 day session now that can get you get you qualified for whitetail scoring only in the state of Ohio.
Okay. So what was kind of the driving purpose for the expedited
we had a lot of people that showed a lot of interest. We're kind of the opinion of the more scores, the better.
Okay.
Because it's, a lot of our guys, I fortunately am retired, but a lot of our guys still work. And it's not easy to hook up with a guy that's from 100 miles away or something, either him come to you or you go to them. And we lose a lot of them through the cracks like that. So we figure that more scores, the better. But we do try to maintain a quality. We make these guys do an apprenticeship. We know that they're qualified, and we actually test them, with a buck that's been scored ahead of time, and we test them before we turn them loose.
Yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense that you guys would do that. So I was kind of interested in how you became a scorer for the program, and if I'm right, so first off, you have to have a buck that's entered, right?
Correct.
And then you show interest in it. Then there's the apprentice pro.
Yes, correct.
Depending. It used to be the 2-year. Now it's that 1 to 2 day.
Well, we still have the 2-year in place. I don't know. I've been at it for a while now, and I don't know how many scores I've had to do the 2-year thing under me. Probably a dozen, maybe.
Okay.
They're taking over now, and they're doing a good job in a lot of different places.
So that would be. I'm interested in getting involved in that, but I gotta get my first. I gotta get my first 140 in there first. I gotta get my first one in there because I am interested to become a scorer. I've been approached by a couple of ODNR guys to come with my law enforcement background to help them out with their.
Yeah, you'd be a great candidate. Get a big one
with their events. I just gotta shoot. I gotta shoot a qualifier first.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked a little bit about how to get entered, or at least what the entering scores are, how to become a scorer for the Buckeye Big Buck Club. Let's talk about the scoring system because it is Boone and Crockett. So tell us a little bit how that scoring system works, because I know some people, the new fad one is the Buckmaster score, which there's I'm heard there's no deductions.
That would be true.
That's true, because I think that's the big hang up for a lot of people is deductions that happen. So of course we're going to hammer on that a little bit, not in a negative way. I'm just kind of curious how the deductions came to play into that, and just how the scoring system usually works out. So.
Okay, well, like I say, we have adopted the Boone and Crockett system.
Yes,
which in its the way that it operates, it rewards symmetry. And now I'm talking about when we do score sheets like you've seen us doing here today. Typical score sheet based on the Boone and Crockett system, where Buckeye Big Buck Club has our own sheets now because we're a one species club. Boone and Crockett scores everything; they can clear to a walrus tusk. And all that, but we're just interested in the whitetails. So the scoring system is set up so that we do like main beam measurements on a buck. We do each individual point measurements. We do 4 circumferences per side on every deer that we do. Now there's a couple categories, typical versus non-typical. Let's say that you've got a nice clean 10-point buck and he's got a split brow tine. So unfortunately that split is a non-typical point, which on a typical sheet is deducted. Now, our non-typical category is 160, 20 inches higher than the typical. So, most bucks, if you get into that range where, unless it's just an absolute jaw dropper with a split tine or something, it's gonna want to qualify to the non-typical. If I'm just going to give you a guess here, I'm going to say it needs to have at least 10, 15, even 20 inches because of the 20-inch higher threshold for the qualification. Up until you get to the non-typical, the non-typical individual point remains a deduction on a typical sheet. On the non-typical, it gets added in, but again, you have to be about 20 inches bigger to qualify for that.
Yeah, that's probably the reasons why, because it is less likely deductions. Are there deductions that happen with the non-typical? Or
yes. In every deer that we score, non-typicals, there is a basic typical frame in there. It could be an 8-point, could be a 10-point, could be a 12. And anything beyond that is, if there's a non-typical point in there, that gets either deduction or added on. So if it's a little difficult to understand. It sounds complicated, but it's really not, because like our head scorer says, there's a typical frame in there everywhere. You got to find that typical frame, get that figured out. So that typical frame then gets deductions. Let's say you got a 25-inch main beam on one side and a 24 on the other. That's a 1-inch deduction, even if he's a non-typical.
Okay.
There's still deductions on a non-typical on the typical frame of that buck.
Okay. I think I
understand that.
Yeah, I think I'm tracking with you. So technically, when you're doing the typical, if they're not symmetrical, since we award symmetry, right?
Correct.
You're still going to take those deductions out, but you're also going to add those abnormal points.
Exactly. You've got it.
Or without having a deduction taken off of those.
Correct.
Okay, got it. I think we got it. So because we had one that probably would have been an interesting one to score, that big 209 that came through today.
Yeah, it came through today. Our head scorer here in the state, Will, did that one for us. And, we mark stuff with tape as we go so we don't lose anything. A little bit of masking tape on something. And actually you end up with 2 colors of tape. You put for instance, a blue one on the non-typicals, and then you find that typical portion and you just proceed. The score sheet is pretty straightforward on what it asks for, and it's not hard to figure out once you define what's typical and what's not.
Right. So what would be the defining line? And maybe we're getting too technical, but I'm kind of curious. What would be the defining line on how you find the typical frame inside that non-typical?
Okay, sometimes that's harder than you think.
Okay.
So a typical buck, the definition of a typical buck is the main beam. The antler points will rise in an upward fashion off of the main beam. So if you've got points sticking up, and they're not sticking, say, 45 degrees to the right or 40, and that's not a given. That's not that's not an all-time rule. But if it's out of line with all the rest of them, you look down a clean 10-point. If you see a point leaning out, that's probably going to be a non-typical.
Okay.
Another thing that is something that disqualifies a point as a typical is if it has a common base. It can have a common base, but you got to make sure that it's not a point off of a point. In the last few months, for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of bucks coming through right now that have that questionable base. Okay. And, there's a way of getting to that. What I tell guys is, our scores, if you take say if you had a laser beam or an ultra sharp knife and you could lay it on the top of the main beam and slice those points off. When you look down there, if you see an oval or a circle, it's a single point. If you see a figure 8 shape or a kidney shape, they're both off the main beam. That's a decision that has to be made by every scorer, and it's somewhat hard. I mean, if you were paying attention here today, there's 4 of us working. There's probably been a couple bucks that come through there. One will bring over to me, say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And Jim, or I'll go over and I'll say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And Will or Ryan or whoever I'm talking to.
Right.
It's nice to be able to put your heads together, and again, that's a decision. There's a lot of decisions on, but I would say that if I scored $10, there was probably going to be 4 or 5 of them, and I got to make a decision on, is this typical? Is it non-typical? Is it a split tine? Is it a drop tine? Is it a flower? So yeah, there's a lot of decision to be made, but we urge all of our scorers, if there's anything in question, this guy has waited months to get this deer score typically, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another day, if I get to consult someone that I have a question about, if I will say, "I'm sorry, bud, but I'm going to have to get this right for you. I don't want to make a mistake here because he's gonna walk away with a bad taste in his mouth if I make a mistake, and I'm gonna feel bad about it as well. So we make every effort to get this as accurate as we can.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good explanation how you explain that with that hot knife, and then if you see the oval or a figure 8, that's a really good way of looking at it.
And along with that, I mean, most guys have developed where you can actually feel that. You can put your hands on the bottom of the base point, and you can kind of feel, where the top of the main beam is. You figure that there's a little concave in there, a little convex or something. It's definitely 2 points if it goes clear to the main beam like that.
Yeah, that's it. That actually is a really good way to explain it, because I was kind of curious about that, how that was kind of figured out. So thanks for clearing that up.
Sure.
So I guess usually if there's going to be a discrepancy between not shooters, but scorers, where's usually your biggest discrepancies come from?
Well,
I don't mean that negatively.
I understand. There's a point there that needs to be solved, and we as scorers cooperate. I mean, we're going to do the deer and turkey. Well, it's not called expo anymore; it's called open season or something out in Columbus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have a large amount of scores there. We usually got like 20 some guys that are scoring. We do that for that show out there.
Right.
They get the people there. They charge them to get in the door. We do the scoring for them. And then there's a ranking, and they do show stuff. But on the other side of that, we benefit as well, because it's a gathering that we get a lot of qualifiers from. There's guys like yourself, for instance. If you came to Columbus, you wouldn't have to hunt me up in Jefferson County or hunt Will up in whatever counties Will is in, at Wyandotte or something, you know, way out there, you can come to that bank or that show and get your buck scored right there. You know there's going to be scorers there, and it's kind of convenience for people, but it allows us to get a lot of bucks in the book without having individual dates with everybody. So yeah, there's a lot of deer there, and there's a lot of situations we can share with other scorers, you know, and I can say, hey, young guy, come over here and look at this. You're going to come across this at some point. This is how you do this.
Right. That makes sense. Sure. And it's good to get everyone together so you guys can be on the same page and things. And also, it's good to be open enough to have that conversation with each other so we can agree, you know, because maybe someone might see something that we don't, and, you know, that might actually make sense. So, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely been a long day for you guys. So you guys, it sounds like you guys have evolved quite a bit, and it sounds like a couple of your good ideas have been implemented and stuff. So let's talk about the typical kind of process here. So I'm Sean. I come into you. I have this, and I know you kind of covered a little bit already, but so I come to you. I have a buck that's going to be entered into the Buckeye Big Buck Club. Okay. Right? So it's measured out, right? It's ready to go. Doesn't matter if we'll just say it just made it, right? Okay. It's not going to be a world record. It just made it, right? What's the next thing while I'm here with you that I do?
Okay. Well, let me back up one step here. Yep. Our Buckeye Big Buck Club, we have an active website, and you can contact that at Buckeye Big Buck Club. And, you know, you can access a list of scorers. Okay. So you pick, you know, the one that's closest to you. You give them a call. You know, sometimes it takes a couple attempts to get hooked up with a scorer because maybe the guy's working an afternoon turn or something. We got a lot of guys at work, you know, the majority. Fortunately, I'm one of the retired ones. But anyhow, we've got a pretty good network. Like I said, 80 some scorers, and you can call different numbers and get a hold of these guys. So they will make an appointment. He'll either come to you, you'll go to him. You'll meet somewhere in between. One of these kind of things like we did today is a great deal, for that. But you will make that appointment, get hooked up with the guy, and he will score your buck for you. Upon scoring, you're going to know whether you qualify for the Buckeye Big Buck Club or not. If you do, it's in that scorer's hands. He will take the paperwork from you. He will collect the entry fee from you. He will get your address, and from that point, your score sheet will be forwarded to our club secretary, who processes them. Our guy is Mike Rex down in Athens County. He gets everything. He goes through them. He will tabulate for us what county, what score, what the person's name is. Then in about January, he will get letters out to everybody, an invitation to our annual banquet, and which has been for the last few years, has been at Ashland. Ashland University accommodates us very well up there.
Okay.
And we have the banquet, which you will get invited to, and you'll have to buy a dinner ticket to go there if you want to have the dinner. It's an all-day affair. There's probably going to be 200-300 deer hanging in there to look at. We're going to have various speakers. The state's going to have a presence there. The head biologist for the state of Ohio whitetails will give a state of the herd kind of a message there. And,
Absolutely.
You'll hear what's going on. Is there any disease anywhere? What our kills were for the last couple of years, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions then if you want to. And it's a great thing. I mean, if you know anybody that's ever been to one, ask them about it. It's a really nice day.
It sounds like a great event. So what is the entry fee?
The entry fee currently is $30.
$30.
When I started, it was $5. But I also could have bought a new truck for 20 grand, or 15 even.
Yeah, you're not doing that for less than 50 now.
We're victims like everybody of economy, and
absolutely,
we're up to $30, and that's a membership that we have, yearly membership. An entry membership. If you want to become a voting member and stay on, it costs $5 a year. And that's what I alluded to earlier. We've got the 21,000, those guys, we never see them again. But there's, and ladies, don't get me wrong. I mean, we've got an amazing number of ladies and children coming forward with these bucks now. But, it allows us to, plan down the road further. And, it's just a good banquet. I would encourage anybody that is able to go to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess I heard a sidebar conversation, maybe I wasn't privy to, but is there a lifetime membership fee they can pay?
Yes, there is. I wanted to say that and I forgot. Yeah, we have in place now a $120 life membership, which you will get an invitation every year to the banquet. If you do that, if you kill a buck down the road, you get in, you're already paid.
You're already paid?
You just bring it to a score and get it in, and he sends it.
Right. So would the entry fee still apply for the 30, or that 120 covers everything?
Yes, it does.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's lifetime.
And that's lifetime. And there's that additional $5 fee doesn't apply anymore.
I don't think it does. Okay. I'm pretty sure that I got one of my scores sitting here that says no, that's not applicable. So with the 120 is a one-time deal.
One-time deal. Awesome. Yep. That works out really good. Good thing you got your sidekick here with you.
He's good for something.
Well, he was a state trooper. We won't hold that against him.
Yeah, he was a retired state trooper.
I think I still see
look at that gray.
Well, he bled gray. He was like now he's just staying in uniform. It's fine. We got it.
Cool.
They had to finally cover up the thread on his hat. From his hat, finally.
I'm done. I'm not saying anymore. He's too big a guy.
He's like, I'm out on that. All right. So you become a member. You go to the club, and we just talked about the entry fees and stuff, and then the fee there. So say someone wants to come to the dinner. How much is the dinner ticket? And this could be ballpark.
Yeah, I think it is. It's ballpark. I think we just had our banquet here February the 16th, I believe it was, so a month ago. And I think our dinner ticket was $30. $30. That gets you in the door and all the things going in. There's merchandise there, Buckeye Big Buck Club merchandise a lot of stuff, hats, shirts, jackets, all that kind of thing, mugs. All that kind of stuff. There's an opportunity to get that stuff there, and we do have some pretty nice raffles there as well. If you want to get involved in that.
Nice. And so can they bring family members with them?
Absolutely. We encourage that. Typically we have round tables set up. It's a big hall. 10 seats per table, and I've seen families, just fill one of them tables or maybe even more. It's a big deal. I mean, someone comes forward, gets a certificate. You wouldn't believe how many of them got their own little rooting section out there.
That's awesome.
It's cool, and the friends, and it's just a great opportunity to.
It sounds like I'm kind of jealous. And hopefully one of these years.
I hope so.
Hopefully one of these years. So, is there a limit number of tickets?
Yeah, we hit that a couple times. I think we're at around. Capacity there, I'm thinking it's around 700. We have hit that a couple of times. A couple years ago, we had to have a double banquet because of COVID.
Okay,
we got canceled one year, which put us into a situation where we had to recognize 2 years worth of bucks in a. I'm going to go back to the quality of the bucks for a minute. That banquet that year. Everybody gets a program of what's going there. It's got all the list of all the deer, what they score, and where they're from, and who shot them, and all that. So I was sitting up there at the front table, which the board member has to sit at the front, and we're going through the program, and I'm kind of looking down through there and just started counting. So that year, which would have been the banquet 2 years ago, we had 22 bucks that scored over 200.
Oh my goodness!
It's amazing. I purposely counted that again this year, and it was 13.
Wow,
that's a 1 year thing. 13 bucks over 200. And I was speaking with you earlier, and let me get up on my stump here and brag a little bit. I don't know that there's another state in the country that can rival not the size of bucks necessarily, but the system that we have to recognize these bucks and get them scored and get people certificates. I would challenge anybody. Let me know if you know of something bigger. But 21,000 deer that we've scored over the last since I don't know what years have been. But I doubt that there's another state can do that.
No, that's the 21,000. That's an impressive number of deer. Yeah. And to be honest, even though that's a big number, like 22 deer
over 200 inches. Now that was a 2 year period.
2 year period. Yeah, but
that's right.
That's an average of 11.
For sure. Yeah.
11.
Like this past year, I did it again. It was 13 just for this year.
Oh, dude. We got one. They came in today. We got one today.
Yep.
Got one today. Man, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I could. I don't know what I'd do if I seen a 200-inch deer on the hoof.
Hopefully, exactly what you're supposed to.
You hope. You hope.
Yeah.
So obviously, I. Without knowing your actual background, I don't know if you're a biologist or anything, but what do you attribute some of those trends to? Like, because you said the quality seems to be, if I heard you correct, you say the quality is kind of going up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean we're killing more big bucks now in Ohio. I mean the numbers in general have gone up. Which if you whatever the buck to doe ratio is, that's all increased. Which but we've got some very good biologists in the state of Ohio, and if you read current stuff, I mean there's a couple newspaper type things, magazines that come out, and they do a lot of work towards what the state wants to project out there. And this state actually has a I forget what he's called, but he's the news officer. He'll release press releases and things like that, and they're encouraging us now in most counties to kill more does. I mean the limits are there. I think that our Jefferson County just went to 3 this year. Over the 2 that we had the preceding year, and they're encouraging us to do that. But I will say that in my opinion, the number one reason that Ohio has these trophy deer like we do is because we shoot 1 buck a year. No matter what season it is, no matter what weapon it is, we kill 1 buck a year, and that maintains our quality. I think that keeps some older bucks in the population doing the breeding. Now the advent of the trophy deer has come in the last 10 years. I mean, there's guys out there that do nothing but trophy hunt now. That's
right. That's
what they do, and because of that, a lot of the 3-year-old bucks are still allowed to walk, which is a good thing if you're a trophy hunter. On the other hand, if the population's getting out of control, it's pretty easy to shoot some does. I mean, and I do that, for myself, my family, we eat deer at our house. Then I have a son that's a very active hunter as much as myself, and we will actually go out and kill a doe or 2 usually early with our bows, and we donate it to a local food food banker. In Jefferson County, we have the Urban Mission that's more than happy to take these things on, and I've delivered them to myself personally to them, and they're very grateful. They said, "Oh, how many sloppy joes, how much hamburger, how much gravy we can make out of this stuff and get to people that need it. So that avenue's there. The state wants us to get the harvest up, which I understand. We've had some bouts of sickness here in the past few years in the deer herd, and it's a valuable tool for trying to reduce what you can there if we all do our part there.
Well, please share with the state that Sean Smith from Tuscarawas County is a doe slayer.
Okay. When we get a scoring system for that, I'll call you.
I will. I have no problem shooting does. We eat a lot. I'm worth you. We eat a lot of deer at our house. There's 4 of us in the house.
Yeah.
5, including my mom, that stays in a in-law suite there at the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not afraid to share it with people.
Yeah,
right?
and it's quality. I mean, sometimes people call it dry. You know what? Go to the local butcher shop and get a little bit of fat to put in there and grind up with your burger if that's what you want to do. It keeps them together, and honestly, it's a good quality, food for people these days. Nourishment, and it's probably as good as beef. A lot of people will tell you that.
If you do it right, like
Sure.
a lot of people like to overcook it. And that's where most of the
it's a big
problems come.
mistake.
Yeah, if you're ground, I would tell you to go ahead and do like well done. Like I will never tell you not to eat ground not well done, but your steaks, roast stuff like that. It's okay to be a little bit of pink, like you want it to be there, because if not, you'll dry it out. But any type of fat. I actually do like a goat cheese and a bacon mixture in my patties.
Okay.
When I make it to add that fat into the patties and stuff,
Cool.
and it actually comes out pretty good. Blue cheese is another one that I do frequently too, but I'm not a huge fan of blue cheese, so goat cheese tends to be the one I add with my ground. So, but so let's talk real quick. What are some trends that you are seeing over the last several years, like the way that when it comes to entries, like whether it's the type of take, what the weapon was used for take, or maybe season, or what time of year it was, anything you've noticed kind of, I guess anecdotally on your end.
Okay. So, needless to say, the crossbow's become a very popular tool to harvest deer. We're in a sporting goods store here, right? How many bows do you see? How many crossbows do you see hanging up? And honestly, I'm a bow hunter myself. I have a compound bow. I'm not against the crossbow. I have a son and a daughter that killed their first deer with crossbows because it was able to get them in the woods at an earlier age. And I've got people on the other end, which I'm 60, soon to be 67, and probably before I'm done hunting, that compound's just going to be too much for me, even at 60 pounds, So will I stop? Heck no. I've got a crossbow hanging in my house right now that I will grab in a minute, if it's what keeps me in the woods. Like I was sharing with you earlier, I'd probably use whatever's legal. If there was an atlatl season, I'd probably have one of them. But, honestly, the crossbows have gotten younger people, older people, and women. There's a lot of women out there just due to their stature and their physical size that can't pull. Some of them can't pull. It took my daughter 4 years to be able to pull a legal bow when she wanted to start bow hunting. But, that didn't keep her out of the woods. She was able to use a crossbow that we had there at the house. And, that is probably the biggest thing. And then also the advent of the rifle cartridges, the straight walls.
Straight walls, yeah.
That's put a lot of other people in the woods. Go to any sporting goods store and ask them what they're selling the most of in the state of Ohio. It's going to be a straight wall. It's going to be a 350 Legend. It's going to be a 4570. It's now the 400 Legends. They're really expanding that, and it gets. We had a 6-year-old young man this year at our Buckeye Big Buck Club, shot his buck with a 350 Legend.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
So the weapons or whatever you want to call them, whenever we use, has come a long ways. Technology, we're there.
Yes. So you showed me a stat earlier, and it almost looks like archery is at least, I'm going to say it, double of what the other seasons are combined.
It kind of, I was shown that stat earlier this year. Our club secretary sent that to me and said, here's some interesting, some information. Now the crossbow kill far outweighs the longbow kill now. And those together are right up there. I can't remember exactly. I think it's equaled or surpassed the gun kill. We're talking shotgun muzzle or straight wall. Handgun.
Yeah, that's
it's gotten a lot of people in the woods.
It has.
It really has. And that's what's needed in Ohio right now with the burgeoning deer population. We need to kill them. We need to keep the numbers down.
Yeah, and you made a good point. I agree with the state. Like, don't be afraid to shoot does. There's
Sure.
if you don't want to deal with, and some people are like, well, I don't want to deal with the the aftermath. I don't
Sure.
want to go clean it. Like
Yep.
there are butchers that are part
absolutely.
of like Hunters Against Hunger or other programs.
Farmers and Hunters Feeding Hungry is one here in the state, which I've actually taken deer to them, and it worked out very well. They cover the cost of the processing, and they take the responsibility to get it to someone that needs it.
Then there's no
excuse.
There's no excuse.
Right.
There's no excuse.
Right.
And to be honest with you, and I know some people, and I know I said to be honest with you, but a lot of people argue like, well, I just want to see deer in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want bigger, better deer, you kind of got to thin them out a little bit.
That's true. Yeah.
Because you got to take some mouse out of the equation to make sure the resources are in good proportion or even surplus for the other ones, so that they have the potential to reach what their true potential is.
Ask any biologist he'll tell you exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about season wise? Like when it comes to big bucks, for the big Buckeye Big Buck Club, what season usually gets the most entries?
Well,
let's say time of year.
Well, yeah. Okay. Let's say time of year. I mean, here across most of this state, November 5th is the magic time, and leading up to that, don't get me wrong, it's a pre-rut, but when you get in that November 5th frame from that for a couple of weeks right there, I mean, it's like in the woods, you don't know what you're going to see next. You don't know where it's going to come from. You don't know how big it's going to be. That is the time period that we kill the most qualifying bucks in. I'm going to say from early November to Thanksgiving. That seems like a pretty long period, but I mean, it's a great time to be in the woods. In Ohio now, our weather has become a little easier to sit during that time, and there's a lot of interest out there, don't get me wrong, for late season as well. Back after you get into January, those big bucks sometimes become a little more predictable. You can get them on a feed pattern, and you can kill a big buck in January.
It seems to be very weather dependent too.
It does, absolutely. I mean, I've talked to a gentleman here today that harvested a buck that was we scored as 150 something, and I said, date of kill is one of the requirements on our score sheets, and I asked him. He said it was January. It was early January. I can't remember what it was, but he said we got a cold front in there. He said we got a little bit of snow. He said I knew them bucks were about their feet, and 20 minutes later he had one on the ground.
There it was. There
Sure.
it was. Absolutely. Man. So I think we covered a lot of good stuff here.
Thanks.
Is there anything else that you think that we need to get out there? I mean, what's your advice to people out there? And let me pose this to you. There are a lot of people when they see, and I'm not saying that inside the hunting community, but maybe people from the outside looking in, that sees clubs like the Buckeye Big Buck Club, Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young, that are going to attack it, saying that it all is promoting is trophy hunting.
Yeah, I've been a victim of that myself. I walked through an airport one time in Phoenix, Arizona. I had killed a beautiful bull elk out there, and the process for getting those on an airplane is you have to walk through the airport from one end to the other. And I fortunately had a friend with me that also had gotten one, and I told him, I said, "Hey, man, I don't know if you've ever been in that big airport, what is it called, Sky Harbor, in Phoenix, it's a long walk from one end to the other. We were not able to put these antlers on the conveyors. We weren't allowed to let them out of our hands. We had to walk that distance." And I told him, I said, "I don't know what, we're going to face here." But, honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought. There were some people that came up with their kids and said, "Hey, could I get my kid's picture taken in front of you with this?" It's like they saw a dinosaur.
That's awesome.
But it is still accepted. But there is that remaining, and unfortunately, as time goes on, the hunters become more the bad guy. And I think it's because we just haven't, our kids' generations, we haven't done our part to get him into the woods. It's easy to let a kid, I'm going deer hunting. Okay, well, you can just sit here and play on your computer. But, we really need to make a conscious effort to do that, and don't get me wrong, take a look at the numbers on a national basis or state basis. You can see that's shrinking every year. But, that doesn't allow us off the hook to do what we can to get into the woods, get kids into the woods.
No, and I think you guys are making the right, or you have been, and it's not saying you're just now making the right steps, but you guys have been a big proponent, and at least ones with leading the torch on some of these concepts that you're talking about.
Well, thank you.
And I really like the idea that you guys are introducing the young kids and giving them an award. Not based off who shot the biggest, but even just the youngest kid who's done it.
It's at our banquets, like I referred to earlier. It's a pin drop moment. I mean, the place shuts down whenever that kid comes up, what is this kid going to say? And I'll say something like, okay, here's the future club. Let's listen to him.
Let's see what they got to say.
Yeah.
I could just imagine sitting there because you're talking about that young lady who was talking about hunting with her mom.
Sure.
And as soon as she said, well, I handed the crossbow off to my mom, like,
yeah. It's like, I'm thinking, what is she going to say next? Maybe I should have rethought this.
We maybe should have rehearsed this before I walked out here on stage. But well, I really do appreciate your time to sit down and kind of talk to me a little bit about the club and a little bit of insight behind it and, the way the scoring works and a few other things. I think it gives a good idea of to give the men and women out there a good idea what to expect. Even look and see what time of season they actually get out there and try.
Yeah, and you said men and women. I want to highlight one more thing. There was a young lady here today, and her husband came in with a nice buck to score. It was a qualifier for a buck club. But last year, this woman had the largest bow killed typical buck, period. World record.
Really?
Yes, into our big buck club, up last year at our banquet. The biggest woman killed bow buck, period. Canada, United States, provinces, anywhere.
What did he score?
You know what? I can't remember. It was over 200, well over 200. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
But, crazy.
So thank you for bringing it up. I guess this is the last real question I have for you. What is the biggest one that you've scored personally?
I have scored a buck that was 259 inches non-typical. Yeah. Yeah. Our state record is in non-typical categories 304 inches.
Oh, is that still the Beatty buck?
Beatty buck, yes, it is. You're correct.
I think it's the Beatty buck. It's insane.
It is. It really is.
That's insane.
Yep.
You begin with, how does that even happen?
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's good genetics out there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good genetics. Well, I do appreciate your time to sit down and kind of talk this and kind of help give a little bit of insight and stuff. Any final thoughts, anything?
I would encourage you to get in the woods, give it a try, get your kids out there, get your wife out there. You may awake a monster that you never knew was there.
Yeah, and I've had a hard time with getting my own kids out. My youngest son finally decided he wanted to go out with a rifle this year, so we got the 360 buck hammer lever, got him out, and I think he's hooked now.
Oh, good for you.
I think he's
good for him.
He shot his first buck, which is a good 1-year-old 6-point.
Good.
He was happy, and I think we got him stoked to go out.
All righty.
So
you're doing your work, man.
Well, we're trying to. Well, you guys are definitely doing your work, and it looks like your day is done here. And listen, I do appreciate the time that you took, not only just to be here to kind of help out the local area here, get their buck scored, and be a good advocate to the sport, but also the time that you took to sit down and kind of talk with us to kind of help continue that advocation. So.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that, and I want to thank Greg here that has this hosts us every year here at Northeast Outdoors. So
absolutely, this is your 4th year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So Greg does a lot of good stuff here in this area. I don't think he gets enough credit for the things he does. Sure. He's humble, anyways. He wouldn't. He wouldn't say it anyways.
I won't say that to him, but he is.
We won't tell him that. Well, hey, once again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to come here and sit down. And I look forward to hopefully next year we'll have one to get into the books with you guys.
Good talking to you.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Well, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed that interview with Jim Williamson. Like I said, Jim is a wealth of knowledge and more than happy to share that with anybody who's willing to listen. And, I think it's really good to hear the history of things, how things came to be, because I think we spend too much time ignoring history. Well, who cares about that? Well, it's important. It's important because it lends you an idea of how we got to where we are, from previous bad decisions to also previous great decisions, or just previous incidents that we had to make a decision over that helped mold what or who we are today. So history is important. Jim is also a wealth of knowledge with just about the club in itself, and also a great mentor, and also a person who does anything in their power to inspire the growth of the outdoor community here in Ohio. I loved the idea that he presented about the award specifically for young kids there at the Buckeye Big Buck Club banquet that they hold every year. That's an amazing thing. It wasn't necessarily about the biggest score. It was about something else. And obviously it sounded like it has a big impact on the people in the room. I really do hope that everyone who listens to this has an opportunity to become a member of the Buckeye Big Buck Club. I know I'm still gunning for it. I thought for sure this year, but the deer I presented was a little deceiving, and or I just did a terrible job judging what he would be. And I say that not because I think that score is important. It's just something I'm shooting for. It does not mean that deer is less worthy. No, that deer means a lot to me. And even though he doesn't score as the biggest to date, he's my biggest to date. And I'm proud of all 5 that I have on the wall right now. And so, but a little mini goal is to be part of the club there. Cause I actually want to be a scorer for them. I want to get involved and help score. I don't know. Maybe it's a way to give back. Maybe it's just a way to kind of gain a little bit more knowledge in the industry. I don't know. Who knows? And, a lot of things that go into that, but that's kind of the goal. Is I want to be a scorer for them. And if you're going to be a scorer, you have to have an entry into the club. So folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I once again, I want to say thank you to Jim, and the other scorers there, Will, the head scorer, and everyone else who was there to help, make that event what it was. Your guys' hard work, I think sometimes could be a little underappreciated because that was a long day. And the 4 of you definitely worked your tails off to get through the amount of deer that you went through. And I know that is just a small fraction of what you guys are getting ready to go through the next weekend at the, whatever they call it down, the Great Out. I don't know what they call it down there in Columbus. Now, it used to be the turkey show. I forget what it is. I think it's Open Season is the name of the show in Columbus this weekend, on March 15th and 16th, I think is the dates. You guys are going to be a lot busier there. Sounds like you bring in more scores, up to about 20. So this won't air before then, but if you guys get a chance to check that out, maybe next year, bring your deer in. Come meet Jim and Will and the crew, and they'll get your buck scored for you. If anything, it's a great time. You get to meet other like-minded people and just be part of a great community. As I said, Jim, thank you for sitting down and bestowing your knowledge upon us. People like you inspire others around you to do better, or to be better, or just to grow, or just anyway, or just to be more knowledgeable. And if somebody can just leave, and I'm going to steal this from Jake Mahar from a previous podcast, if you can just leave just 1% better from an encounter, then you were successful. Just shoot for that, be happy with that 1% better. Because eventually it'll grow to be 100% better when you add them all up. Once again, big thanks to the Buckeye Big Buck Club. Like I said, thank you for all that you do. And once again, I got to say thank you to Greg there at Northeast Outdoors for hosting this event. If you guys missed on part 1 of this, we sat down with 3 hunters that came in with their deer to get scored, and all of them made it into Buckeye Big Buck Club. And spoiler alert, if you've not heard part 1 yet, we sit down with an individual who shot a 200-inch plus deer to hear his story. All 3 are great stories. Make sure you check it out. Should be posted live on where you guys see your podcast at. At least in Apple, Amazon, YouTube, and also Spotify. We might branch out to more later on, but right now we're just kind of focusing on those. But anyways, folks, I do appreciate your time. We appreciate that you chose to listen to our podcast. If you want to know more about Country Fried Outdoors, please make sure you check us out on our social media accounts. That's Country Fried Outdoors on the Instagram, spelled with a K, or Country Fried Outdoor Productions on YouTube, once again, spelled with a K. Or, as I stated earlier, check us out on either Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, or YouTube to check out the next episode or even previous episodes of the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. And in closing, I really do wish for each and every one of you to be safe while you're out there chasing your experience. And until our paths cross again, or the next podcast, God bless you.